You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Cynthia Toolin-Wilson on my show, Author to Author, and today I'm here with my friend, Dr. Ray Dennehy.
How did you come across deciding to write this book on anti-abortionists?
I owe much of the motivation for that to the late Father James Shaw, at Georgetown. Mm-hmm. And he encouraged me to write it. And so with that, I did. And but I wrote it, as I was saying last night, not as a monograph, but rather as my experience entering into the pro-life movement. And of course, it becomes a monograph, but it's surrounded by my actual, experiences with the people, my opponents, my colleagues, and everything like that. And so I wrote it, and then I sent the query to 2 publishing houses in New York. I've forgotten the name. And they rejected them. They weren't even interested in it.
Yeah.
And then one of my former teaching colleagues, who's a writer, told me in New York City the chief consumers of books are women, and they're generally pro-abortion.
Yeah. I believe that.
So I just had a vanity press do it, and I keep wanting to call it trapezoid for some reason, but it's what? Trapped.
Oh, okay.
Trafford.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I was lucky because I don't know if I told you this yesterday. I was lucky because the woman in charge of the artistry and cover for Ignatius Press, she did it for me for nothing, and she had the only photographer that Frank Sinatra would use take my picture.
That's excellent.
And so that was something I was grateful for, and it didn't cost a nickel, so that was good. And then I wrote it just actually from my experience, how how you talk about things in class, whatever they might be. But then I would get invitations to to lecture before a group and everything, and then debates. And then in the book, what I start with is going to a high school in Palo Alto, California, called Mayweather, and I thought that was very preppy. And when I got there, I found out it had changed to a continuation school for troubled teenagers. So when I came into the class, there were about 3 or 4 adults, teachers, and they were some of the kids were sort of disrespectful, and and they had problems. Like one big guy stood up and said, "I wish my mother aborted me," because when they bought my bike, it was a second-hand bike, and my brother got a new one. And then after the talk, this guy came up. The student looked like a choir boy. And he said, my mother said, when she found out I was against abortion, I should be against abortion. And he said to her, that effing W,
Yeah.
And so I said, this is a different group. They didn't have the kind of, what do you call them, the tranquilizers on the market then.
It sounds like they may have needed them.
one guy in the audience said he's going to run up and beat the hell out of me.
Oh, my.
And I'm pretending to be impervious to that while my heart's beating. I thought, what if he charges up here? What do I do? So that was my first experience. Then my second experience was on a radio show in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And it was a very popular show. And the guy was the interviewer was very good, very nice. And we talked about that, but in it I point out, I wimped out. I couldn't bring myself to say abortion is killing. I said, well, we should concern ourselves as whether that's a human being. You know that? And I thought, what a wimp. So that was the end of my wimpy days. And so then I would be invited to various groups, and I would say directly that it's killing a human being. And when you deliberately kill an innocent, directly kill an innocent person, that's murder. Yeah. And so I went on that. And then some of the people I met in the pro-life movement were not very desirable folks. And one guy boasted about beating up a pro-abortion teacher after the talk. And he boasted of that. He thought that we would be we would admire that.
Oh, boy.
And then the other things you learn from debating, a lot of things you wouldn't think of. Like I debated a guy who looked very, unthreatening, and he said, well, now when I go into a restaurant and order eggs, I don't expect the fertilized eggs to be fertilized. And that caught me off guard, because then I found out there are restaurants that offer fertilized eggs.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And
so
you pick things up like that, or people who say, well, when I debated at Berkeley, I had the case where a woman from, I think she was Now, or Planned Parenthood, I've forgotten which, and she said, but I don't want to debate. We just present our positions. That's fine. So I presented my position, and then when she got up to speak, she rebutted me. So a debate. And so you learn there are, not everybody understands the nice, clean arguments of the Platonic dialogues. They go after. So went to that, and then you just, as John Dewey says, we learn by doing, and you get things. One time at Berkeley, the classes had hundreds of students in them. So it's a great apostolate, and they're pretty polite and nice. And one girl in the front row got up as I started speaking and put her hands over her ears and ran out of this big auditorium.
Oh, boy.
And, so we figured we know what was going on in her mind. And so you have things like that. And one met me outside as I'm walking to the parking lot, and she said, that's not a human being. And I thought she was going to hyperventilate, She was starting to breathe heavy. But anyway, nothing happened. And so there's this, but it's not very common. I guess it's not like arguing before a union or something like that. A union of workers or something. And so I did that, and it went on, and for over maybe almost 30 years. And recently, California Catholic last year did an article on me. San Francisco Catholic.
Okay.
and then it got to California Catholic and this and that, and it was all the newspaper and magazine pro-life articles in Canada and North America. And the article written by me got second place. Wasn't because of me, it was because of the writer. But so you know, and you get it around, and you'd actually convert some people. And in my the book I'm having published by Sebastian, and I write on the second joyful mystery. But I point out sometimes it's not very easy to help the person in need.
Yes.
Did I tell you this? Well,
no, you didn't, but I agree with you.
Well, what I mean is, I was walking on the main street of Toronto, Bloor Street, Friday night, summer night, nice. I saw a big crowd of people and cars stopped when I got up there. This man, he's in his 20s, I would guess, he's beating up a woman of about the same age, and nobody's doing anything. And I thought, well, I got to do something. And just then, a very muscular man came running out of the tavern across the street, tank top, T-shirt, shaved head, and he knocked the abuser down. And when that happened, the girl who was being beaten up, she threw herself on him to protect him from the rescuer. And they walked off arm in arm, at which time he said, "I love you, baby." And I thought,
no.
I thought, what she needs, first of all, for help, is a psychiatrist's couch.
Yes,
and,
definitely.
That's, you know, and that's hard for me because I grew up in the Mission District in San Francisco. It was a tough Irish district. And nobody boasted about hitting women. It was always fighting other men, you know. Nobody took glory in the thought of hitting a woman. So, although I'm sure it happened somewhere, but so you learn things like that, and then you get people who are interesting. One guy, I have the chapter entitled "The Man Who Wouldn't Have an Abortion." He got divorced because his wife wanted to have an abortion, and he wouldn't go for it, and so that set everything up. And he was in my class. I was teaching a class for the Archdiocese of San Francisco on social justice, and she and he came up to me after and told me his story, and you know, but he just wouldn't do it, and you know, he's been single ever since and all that. And I thought, gee, you know, and then I've had a woman in my class at the university write me a letter after the course was over saying she was against pro-life people until she took my course.
That's
she
good.
She said after the court ended, I got pregnant, and I was thinking of having an abortion, and I read all the stuff you had in the class, and I realized I couldn't kill that human being in me. And my now husband and I are very happy with this bundle of joy. And just that one instant makes all those years worthwhile, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
And so the book is about various episodes and letters I wrote to U.S. senators and state senators about abortion, and then you get the usual, you know, I don't know what you call it, political talk. And but you do make a difference. And then some people, like a couple of women wrote me from across from your neck of the woods, that they're college types, and they're against abortion now because they read my book. and that made that's great. I like that. Because it's not like selling used cars. You don't say, I sold this car, I sold that car. You don't know what kind of impact you made on a crowd.
That's right. That's right.
Go on. Let me remember. I was vaccinated with a phonograph needle. So,
yeah. But yeah, that's it's amazing when you think of the impact you can have and not even know it.
That's right.
So I'm sure you've had quite a bit over all those years. So.
Oh yeah, and then you get a hostile letter or something,
Oh sure, yeah.
But I've never been in Socrates' position that they were going to kill me if I didn't keep my mouth shut.
Right.
And then the last chapter of the book, I call it The Vampire's Kiss. How do I make that work? Well, I was thinking that when you get into a certain situation, the vampire bites the woman's neck, and she submits to the embrace and all that, and then he turns her into a vampire.
Right.
And I'm pointing out that, a lot of these women get abortions, and they don't realize the impact on them emotionally.
Yes.
And and I talk about. I had an interest in Dracula, and it was one of the best novels I ever read. And I thought there was sort of a parallel between the abortion movement and Dracula. And right now I've forgotten why, but it's there in the book. And I wrote the book in 1974. So time has passed.
Oh, yes.
But the good part, if Sebastian wants it, I guess it was 2002. 2002 it was written. But anyway, if he wants it, I have a document that says I have the complete control of the books. And do with them what I want to. So.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
But because I look at what he offers on the website as the books he's published, and they're mostly religious. And I can't say that the abortion book is religious. I just deal with it philosophically, and sociologically and everything. But Soldier Boy has a better bet in that regard. But he may not like either of them. So I've been used to dealing with editors, so I realize they have books to sell and they can't be worried about, more than they offend the authors. And so that's how it went, and it's the best-selling of the books I've written. And I think it may have done 4,000, but and I think Soldier Boy did better. Didn't do better, but did well. And so we'll see. And one book, my first doctoral dissertation, that my director, I told you, and the committee wouldn't prove it.
Yes.
And one professor at a community college in Idaho is using it in his course. So it's well written. It's the best thing I've written. And so, but the abortion thing was in the air, and now it's coming back. The interest, because the election's coming up, and people don't realize how much money the Democratic Party is putting into defeating anti-abortion, legislation. And it's the whole thing is getting sort of crazy, like what's her name, the vice presidential candidate?
Oh, Harris, yes.
Yes, she's for the infanticide of infants that survive abortion.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
And so, that's the way it goes. But I think people, I would like to hear priests speak more on the topic from the pulpit. Because people have to hear this, and yeah. And so that's the only thing there. Only once I was invited to Mission Dolores Church in San Francisco on Sunday Mass to speak from the pulpit on abortion. I survived.
Yes.
But I think,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I don't.
I was just thinking of how many people I know. I mean, obviously I'm anti-abortion, but how many people I know from when I was studying as a sociologist, that was my original degrees, and how many people I know have had abortions. I had a friend, of all things, we sewed together, and I'm a quilter, and she had an abortion because her husband had abused her or was abusing her. She had one child, and she decided she could never let another child go through what her husband would do, hit the child, that sort of thing. So she had an abortion when she was in her early 20s. She was telling me this when she was in her 60s, and you could see how upset she was. But no one ever talks about what this does to the woman, and they don't realize it until it's too late. So that's that's a tragedy, such a tragedy.
You're right, and I mean, at one point, the University of San Francisco has a very good nursing program. I mean, nationally recognized. And one time they started a new part of it where people in nursing could work there for a degree. So these would be older women and men. And I mean, I started, this is a course in bioethics, so one of the topics is going to be abortion. Right. And one woman in class said, "Oh, most of us here have had abortions, and we're not interested in that."
That's pretty bad.
Well, if you're not interested in that, you might as well withdraw from the course,
Yeah.
But she didn't. But, there's attitudes like that, or, you and Professor so-and-so is the only one on campus that speak against abortion. And my thought was, so what? I mean, that's part of the course.
Yeah.
And so, you're right. And I got one of the general emails you get from, I've forgotten her name, she runs this. She's always just concerned against surrogate mothers and all this stuff. And she says it's very clear now that people who have abortions have a high rate of breast cancer.
Yes, there's no question of that.
Yeah,
which is not surprising.
But no, it's hell on whippets. It's a typical problem of the quick fix,
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not a quick fix either for the child or for the mother who has to remember what she's done for the rest of her life.
That's right. That's very, very right. And I think they just, the momentum must increase against that evil organization called Planned Parenthood. And people, and somebody put an email up, represents an organization, exhorting the bishops to speak publicly against abortion. And he has a model letter of objection. And I don't know how many supporters he picked up with that, but they've got to, do something, because this is we've lost more people than we've through abortion. And I have a source for this. I just can't remember it. Than in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, both sides, World Wars I and II, the Korean War, and I've forgotten what more minor war happened. And we've lost like 70, 90 million. I've forgotten what it is.
Oh, I know.
And you say, and you know that physician that was sent to jail? I've forgotten his name. He ran the abortion. I think it was in Philadelphia. And when people gave him a fetus that had survived the abortion, he just took out his surgical scissors and snapped the nerves in the neck. You know?
Yeah.
And so he was thrown in the jailhouse. So, but something's got to be done. And one of the problems with politicians, of course, is that so many of them are spineless and opportunistic. And, you know, whatever way the political tide is going, you know.
That's what they'll do.
Yeah. And so, this book is always bound up with my own experiences, my own foibles, and people I've met, some I didn't like in the pro-life movement. Some I did. One guy called me up and said, "Would you come down to my house? I'd like to hear you talk about abortion." And so I came down, and there were a couple of other people there. And I hardly got a word in. He took over everything.
Oh boy!
Now, why did I come here? But anyway, if people speak out, when they don't win, like Roe v. Wade vaporized the basis of all human rights.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have to respect the right to life of the innocent, I don't have to allow you or me to speak, or peaceful public demonstration, or you name it. And they don't realize what they're buying into. And, you know, Hitler came to power in Germany in 1933, if I'm not mistaken, 1933. But about 1920, physicians and other prestigious people were pushing for infanticide, and there's a book by Koch and Bindung, which was of course written in the German. One was a lawyer and the other was a philosophy teacher. And they were pushing in the 20s for the euthanasia of very sick children. And so this started before Hitler. And apparently Hitler never gave a law demanding euthanasia. But people were doing it, you know.
Oh, sure.
You know, so we sort of lead ourselves to the gallows, you know, because we'll just, as they say, vaporize democracy. And so that's my Raymond Dennehy's little song. And I, you know, a lot of stuff in the debate circuit you just learn by debating. You can't, you know, you can't get it out of a book or anything. It just, you know, you're confronted with it, and there's a lot of people there. And some people are good at making the audience laugh at your expense. You know?
Yeah.
And so, but people have to give witness. I mean, I feel this is the big secret against secularism. That, you know, it's just making such great progress in our country.
Yeah. Well, you know, I agree with the giving witness because, you know, as I mentioned yesterday to you, I'm an abortion survivor myself. You know, my mother tried to abort me in 1949. And I think it's, you know, it's like anytime anybody compliments me on something I've done, not that that happens that often, but when it does, I always say, you know, I just want to point out to you that my life matters, that I've been able to do something like this because my mother tried to abort me. And I'll tell you, I get into a lot of conversations with people about that. And it's like they think, oh, you know, I think it gives them a perspective when they're speaking to someone who has survived this. So that witness factor. But the other thing that I don't know if you've ever talked about this, but this is something that's been huge in my thought about this, about the effects of abortion. You know, if you kill one baby, you know, then think of all the descendants that you're wiping out for potentially thousands of years. So we might kill 1 million babies, but really you are not just killing them, you're preventing the birth of maybe another 10 million. So the actual effect is humongous.
Yeah. Oh, that's no question about that. That's, you know, people don't get it. And, you know, it's interesting. What's his name? The minister was very prominent. He ran for the Democratic nomination for president. I can't think of his name. He's African American.
Oh, and, yes, I know. But I can't think of his name either.
His mother was pregnant out of wedlock, and she was pressured to have an abortion, and she didn't. And he was it Jesse Jackson? Yeah.
Yes,
maybe.
That's it, yes.
And anyway, for a long time, he even wrote a long article in the National Right to Life newspaper against abortion. And but then when he picked up the hat to run for president of the United States, he became pro-choice.
Yeah.
And which was a big shame, but for a long time, you know, and you have to, as I said yesterday, I talked to this kid. My mother didn't have an abortion when she was a student here at Berkeley. She wouldn't have had a good education, and she wouldn't have had good things to give me. And, you know, my thought was, you mean if you were the baby inside, she would have killed you? And they don't get what the consequences of all this is. And then they're now in Holland. They've legalized killing children that are in bad shape physically. Up to 12 or 13 years of age.
And that's really bad.
And that just was in the paper a couple of weeks ago. And people are going nuts. I had a friend, a physician. He was head of obstetrics for a while at the University of California in San Francisco. And, you know, and he was, I was at his house for dinner one time, and he said, I'm very tired. I was up until 2 a.m. last night. A baby was born, and it had 2 heads. And you know, there's nothing you can do about that. He said you can cut off one head and try to give the other a living. You can't, you know. But anyway, when my abortion book came out, I gave him a copy, and we talked. And one time, he always took me to the symphony, and San Francisco Symphony. And one time during the intermission, he says, "Why are you my friend? I do abortions." And then that's what. And so when we give a St. Patrick's Day party every year, being a good Irishman, and he didn't answer the invitation, and that was the last of our friendship, you know. And see, I realized, and he was invited to every Thursday to a hospital south of San Francisco, and for a consultant. I thought that was just for obstetrics, but I suspect he was doing abortions. Because he got $1,000 a Thursday, you see.
Oh,
and, and so, this is one of the big problems, money or what. I don't understand what leads people to it, but it's always something initially benign, right?
But it doesn't stay that way.
No. And so, and when I was a young professor, junior professor at the University of Santa Clara out here, Santa Clara is about 50 miles south of San Francisco, and Jesuit school. They were, the Pope would come out with Humanae Vitae, politics, and I was asked to write an article in the school paper against abortion. And I said to the editor of the paper, well, I'm struggling with a dissertation. I don't know if I have time. He says, well, if you don't write it, there'll be no article against contraception. And so I wrote it. And then I wound up debating in public the head of the theology department, the Jesuit. If I was defending Humanae Vitae, he was against it. And but Dave crashed. I'll tell you his story. He's dead now. But he got laicized and married, so it was all legitimate. And he wound up teaching at Georgetown. And he got a vasectomy, and he sent the bill to the Jesuit community at Santa Clara, and they paid for it. Two of the Jesuits in that Santa Clara community verified that for me.
Wow.
I mean, that's really decadent. And
yes, it is.
Yeah. And so, the times are what they are. And just, I'm trying to remember the Latin. Let's see, corruptio. The three words, corruptio, and then the best is the worst. Corruption and the best is the worst. I can't think of it. I think of all the Latin I took up at Toronto. And this is what's happening. People are of education and good breeding. They're the ones who are selling out, And nobody's speaking at all. So that's it. And so my book is, basically about these experiences. So my argument is always intertwined with these actual experiences. I like that German word. I can't even think of that now. Talk about dementia.
That's not dementia. That's normal. I'm the same way.
Well, dementia. It's in English. It would be roughly lived experience. I should know it. And people don't realize what they're starting when they start maybe abortion, then we're doing euthanasia, etc. And this is tough stuff. I know as an academic, I don't have, it's the word is Erlebnis. I don't have the lived experience. I just have a conceptual experience, and which is quite different. And when I talk about death and everything, and so this is, some people have to speak out. That's all, and I think priests have to do a better job. I'd love to hear a priest from the pulpits speak against contraception.
Yeah.
And I was in when Humanae Vitae came out, one of my colleagues and his wife were so outraged, they left the Catholic Church and became Anglicans.
Oh, boy.
And another time, I was in church, and the priest actually gave a sermon against abortion. And when the sermon was over, there was a couple sitting up front. The wife got up and stormed out. It looked like, from the way she was walking and her facial expression, that she didn't agree with it. And she left her husband up there.
Oh,
but
boy.
it's going to produce sparks when you start talking about touchy stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And, but something has to.
But see, if we don't talk out against it, then people will continue to do what they shouldn't be doing. I'm not going to say that talking about it will necessarily stop it, but it might make people think, and you never, as we said earlier, you never know who you're going to impact. You know, you literally could just talk about something like that, and someone, it's like, that's it, I'm not doing it. You know, so important to talk.
You're really right. In the books that En Route is publishing, I write about I think it's the fourth joyful mystery. I talk about the power of example, you know, quiet example.
Yeah.
You know, when Mary and Joseph bring Christ to church, is the start of teaching your kids to put God first, I would think. And when I was in the Navy, I was a petty officer, and I had other enlisted men under me, although I was an enlisted man too. He was a sensational worker, and it was really quite a good seaman. And when you go overseas, prostitution is absolutely rampant because it's not illegal, and all the sailors are over there. And he would go to the bars, have a couple of drinks, and even sometimes dance with the girls, but never sleep with prostitutes. And every night in bed, he would unobtrusively read his Bible. And what I noticed pretty soon, and he never criticized anybody, and pretty soon there were married sailors who were cheating, you know. They had to make up joke stories about him. And he said nothing, but his very presence was a kind of mirror to their infidelities, you know. And so I saw, behavior can be silent, but it can be very powerful.
Yes, it can.
So, I mean, but it's a complicated world. And but when I mention this, I'm always reminded of a story. When I was in the Navy, that was in the mid-50s, 54 to 58, I was aboard a heavy cruiser. We had 1,000 men. And gonorrhea was easily cured. When a sailor had gonorrhea, they gave him one shot of penicillin, and then 10 days later he'd get a urine test. If that was negative, he was off quarantine.
Yeah.
And one guy, when he was cured, and when the ship got back into port, he went over and had sex with the same prostitute and got gonorrhea. And when asked why he didn't get this, he said, "I went over to give it back to the bitch." And so the Navy gave him an undesirable discharge. They figured with sailors like him, you don't need enemies, you know.
Really?
Yeah, it was really. He apparently didn't understand which way it works, but anyway, example, people notice it, and so that's quite true. And but then the speech, Christ told us we should follow his example and speak what he spoke. You know, and in a secularized society, it's harder and harder to do.
Yeah, it is.
When Barack Obama spoke at a Catholic university back east, I've forgotten its name, he asked, they had a religious emblem on the wall above where the speaker stood, and he asked that they cover it up before he spoke, and they did. That's really disgusting. But they do. There are a few Catholic schools. I heard bad things about Georgetown now, and I know my own university. When I went there, you had to take one theology course every semester. So it was a 2-unit course. And now you only have to take one course, not in theology, but in what is called religious studies.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be Christian. It can be Buddhist, you know. And and we always had crucifixes up in the classroom, and they were taken down. And one president came in and put the crosses back up, but no Christ on it, you know.
Yeah.
And but these things have changed, you know. The Jesuits have gone off the radar screen, so and I you know, so. But anyway, so there's a lot of work to be done, but
yes, there is.
I won't be around for it, which is probably good. And so that's
well, you've
it.
helped
Anyway,
to lay the foundation, and that's you know, no house stands without a foundation. You've done good work.
And it's what people hear, like, you know, I was one of the early founders, but Joe Fessio founded the St. Ignatius Institute at University of San Francisco. And but I was with him from the first. It was all his brainchild, but you know, I was teaching in it, and they were great students. And when I retired, I was 80. These students came from across the whole country on their own nickel to be at my retirement party.
That's wonderful.
And then the millennials came, and I went into the dumper. And they were just a different breed, you know. And so I don't know how things are going to turn. Christ promised that the gates of heaven shall stand against hell, and that's good. And but anyway, I always pray in my rosary that I ask Mary to make sure I got the last rites.
Yeah, very important.
I'm sort of like, I like that. But anyway, I hedge my bets. I have both a crucifix and a miraculous medal around my neck. And because I read all of Mary's promises to the various saints. And I say, oh, that's for me. But so, I mean, and you know, things like abortion are traps in the sense that they lead, you know, to, as we were saying, you know, the psychological, you know, pain of the woman. And also people that do worse, to go to euthanasia and everything of this sort. So, you know, people have to keep saying, I'm afraid to get up and debate now. I don't know what I'll say. So I gotta watch that. But otherwise, you know, that's the book. It's my lived experiences, with the pro-life movement. And I had the experience of meeting a remarkable woman. I've forgotten her name. She was the first African-American woman to go through Harvard.
That's impressive.
Law school or a PhD, I forgot what it was. And she was anti-abortion, and she was really a good speaker, you know. And, you know, she was in our San Francisco group. Mildred Jefferson, that was her name.
Okay.
And she was in our San Francisco group. And very, very impressive. So you meet very good, interesting and remarkable people, too. And,
I agree.
I have one chapter called Bad Companions, and I told you that. And I have talked about some people who are really, you don't need them, but they're there. So, there we are.
Yeah.
But,
well, that's an impressive book. I think people must enjoy it.
I think so, and but we shall see. And we shall see. I can't think of the publisher. Isn't that terrible? Anyway, what they sold to another company, Trafford, and Trafford sold to another company, and they were just bugging me to invest money in these book shows and everything for Soldier Boy. And it just turned me off because he said if you buy 100 books, you get this. I said, what am I going to do with 100 books?
Yeah.
I have to stand on street corners, you know. And I just hope you always hope that you do some good, you know. And
of course. And believe me, you have done good. So.
Well, I don't know. I feel, you know, the penalty of age, you know, as they say, you know, did I tell you about the comedian Rodney Dangerfield's statement to his daughter? He said, did I tell you?
No.
Oh, he said, I have the body of a 21-year-old. And she said, you better give it back. You're getting it all wrinkled. And
I love it. You know, but the thing is, once you write something, people can read it. You know, 100 years, 200 years from now, someone can read what you've written and say, oh, look at the struggle they were having at that point, and they'll have a different perspective on what happened after we're dead, you know, after we're gone. So it's very important that you've not only lectured and given people this information, but that you've also written it down.
I must tell you, I was almost de facto euthanized, but not by intention. I had this, it was a sort of a rare disease, but it's increasing. I can't think of it now. I woke up with a sore throat, which I don't get. And went to the doctor, and she diagnosed it as garden variety sore throat, and gave me a little baggie of Tylenol to take home. And my wife, fortunately, had the day off, and she said to the doctor, this isn't like him. He doesn't get sore throats, and his voice sounds weird. So she sent me up to ears and throat, and I would have been dead in an hour, she told me.
Oh.
It's a common, we eradicated that disease. People would often get it from dogs, but then people are living longer than the vaccine. And
Oh.
And I had that, and he had to take out, do a trichotomy and everything. Mm-hmm. And one night I'm in bed in the hospital, and this male nurse comes in with what looked like a large hypodermic, and he said, I was holding it in his hand, and he said, how long have you been diabetic?
Oh.
I said, I've never been diabetic. And he goes, oops, wrong room.
Oh.
I thought, what happens when you get a shot for diabetes and you don't have diabetes? You go into insulin.
Sure.
And,
oh, boy. I don't know.
Bad.
Yeah. Well, I've certainly enjoyed this interview as much as I've enjoyed the one last night.
Yes, I hope we get to meet sometime.
Yes, I'm glad that we did, and I'm glad that we got to talk. And I'm really glad that you've given this witness out in books that can last for centuries. And, who do you don't know who you'll influence. You may influence someone who lives 100 years from now, and
that's right.
It's wonderful. You've had a wonderful life. Yeah.
People have to hear. Yeah, well, in the, since I wrote that book on the mysteries, I'm always talking about the mysteries, but in the, what am I saying now? I can't think of it. The mystery where, the second glorious mystery, Christ says, I'm leaving you now. Mm-hmm. You won't see me again, but don't worry. If people threaten your life or anything, I'm with you. So Christ always has a back. And I'm convinced. I grew up, blue collar, and barely got out of high school, and went to work in a couple of jobs. Finally joined the Navy, and I found myself, and that's when I started saying the rosary at night. And then I went to college, and then I got a PhD, and I'm convinced the sacrament of confirmation, the Holy Spirit got me, and I'm the one who goes and debates. As I say, I did 52 consecutive debates at UC Berkeley before hundreds of students.
Wow.
Debated law students that engaged in debate with a physician among law students at Stanford, et cetera. And I thought, well, see, this is the plan God had for me. Because being a self-absorbed male, I had never worried or thought about what people would think of me, about anything. And so I just go over and speak. I even debated homosexuality, and more and more of it, because it's in San Francisco. And so I'm very grateful to God. He let me have these many years, of pro-life activity, and so I thank Him regularly that I don't know what I'd turn out to be otherwise, because I was totally listless and without a goal, and it all changed in the Navy,
Yeah. I believe it.
So.
Well, thank you for this interview, and I will make sure that Sebastian gets the recording tonight, and I'm sure that he'll have it on the radio show by tomorrow. So
that's good.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed these talks.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And I'm happy. I enjoy talking to you too. And
great.
I've been up against some very inhospitable interviewers.
Oh, okay.
So I'm very glad that you were gracious and encouraging. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. Well, you have a good night, and thank you again so much for the interview.
Well, thank you for interviewing me, and you have a good night, too.
Okay. God bless.
And what a good friend used to say to me, and I know it was positive, I just don't know what it meant. He would always say, keep your pores open. So
You've also got a great sense of humor. I don't know what it means either. But
positive.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, okay. Hopefully
take
we'll
care.
See each other. Yeah, you
I
too.
know.
Bye-bye.
I hope. Bye-bye.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.